The day the sky broke open was the day humanity learned what it meant to be small. From the hills above the little town of Laren, a young soldier named Elias stood among hundreds of others, watching the heavens ripple like water disturbed. The stars dimmed, their gentle light drowned beneath a vast, silent silhouette. It was not a ship in the way human minds had ever conceived ships. It was more like a continent drifting across the black canvas, so large that its edges disappeared behind the curvature of the earth. The first to see it trembled, but not Elias. His heart thundered, yet his jaw remained firm. He had spent years under the most merciless training Earth had to offer, the kind of training that broke bones and spirits, until only unyielding will remained. He was part of the Vanguard, an elite unit forged not for battlefields of man against man, but for a higher, unspoken purpose. None of them had known what that purpose was until this night. A voice carried over the gathered crowd. General Kavanaugh, a weathered leader with eyes sharp as steel, spoke without hesitation. The time has come. Everything you've endured, every drop of sweat, every shattered muscle, every sleepless night was for this moment. That thing in the sky is not a visitor. It is a test of our survival, and we are Earth's answer. A hush settled. No one questioned him. The Vanguard had been shaped in fire, and trust was their steel. Above them, the alien Leviathan began to glow. 1,000 fissures opened along its underbelly, and from them descended smaller vessels, like sparks dripping from a dying star. The world below gasped, but the Vanguard moved with precision, falling into formation as though they had rehearsed this very sight 1,000 times. Elias adjusted the strap of his rifle, though he knew it was little more than a symbol against a power so unfathomable. His weapon wasn't the steel in his hands, it was the training etched into his bones, the discipline carved into his very breath. He thought of his sister, Arya, who had once asked him why he endured so much pain for a life of soldiering. He had never found the right words then. But now, as the air quivered with alien engines, he understood, because someone had to. The first clash was not fire, but silence. A light fell across the mountains, brilliant and cold, freezing the rivers in an instant. The Vanguard sprinted through the chaos, every step guided by drills that had seemed cruel when they were young. Roll under fire. Hold your breath under ice. Climb until your fingers bled. They had cursed their instructors, cursed the merciless nights. Yet now, in this storm of the unknown, they moved like shadows born of purpose. Elias dropped beside his comrade Mira, whose calmness was legend among them. She glanced once at the burning valley, then at him. We always knew it would be bigger than us, she said. Yes, Elias replied, but not bigger than humanity. For the first time that night, he allowed himself a small smile. It wasn't arrogance, but conviction. Humanity had always been outmatched by beasts, by famine, by storms, by itself. And yet somehow it endured. That was Earth's true weapon. As alien soldiers began to pour from their vessels, towering forms with armor that shimmered like liquid stone, the Vanguard charged, not because they expected to win in that instant, but because they refused to bow. And in that first charge, when flesh met steel and resolve met terror, something remarkable happened. The aliens faltered. For though they had studied Earth's weapons, though they had measured Earth's resources, they had not accounted for the unyielding spirit of humans trained to stand even when the sky itself fell. That night, Elias learned a truth that would carry through every battle yet to come. The sky was never empty. It was waiting, and Earth had been preparing all along. The first battle on Earth was not one of victory, but of revelation. The alien soldiers moved with terrifying precision. Their bodies were tall and curved, as if sculpted from living stone, their weapons spitting beams of light that split rock and steel as if they were clay. Against them, ordinary armies faltered, their lines scattering like sand before a storm. But the Vanguard did not scatter. They flowed like a river cut loose from the mountain, swift, determined, unrelenting. Elias felt the ground tremble beneath his boots as explosions tore through the valley. He ducked behind a ridge, Mira landing beside him with a roll. Around them, the sky was lit by the fire of alien ordnance, yet their hearts burned hotter. We can't break them head on, Mira said, her breath sharp, but her voice steady. Then we don't, Elias replied. His hand brushed over the familiar shape of the comm link on his wrist. We break what they don't expect. Their training had not been about strength alone. It had been about imagination under fire. For years they had been tested in impossible scenarios, outnumbered, outgunned, out of time. Every drill had forced them to ask one question: what is the way forward when there is no way forward? The answer was always the same: create one. Elias signaled his squad, a handful of hardened warriors who had long since shed the luxury of doubt. They nodded, already knowing the plan before words were spoken. That was the bond the Vanguard shared. Trust deeper than blood, forged through years of surviving together. They climbed higher into the jagged cliffs, their bodies moving with instinctive rhythm. The air was thin, cold, sharp against their lungs, but they had trained on mountains harsher than this. Below, the alien soldiers marched with their strange flowing armor, unaware of the trap being laid above them. When the moment came, Elias gave a sharp whistle, the kind only his team would recognize. From the cliffs, stones thundered down, shattering the alien formation. It was not enough to destroy, but enough to disrupt, and disruption was the lifeblood of human strategy. Mira hurled a grenade into the chaos, its blast echoing against the valley walls. The aliens stumbled, their perfect order fracturing as Vanguard fighters darted among them, striking hard and vanishing before retaliation could find them. It was not a war of equals. It was a storm of gnats against titans. Yet for the first time, the titans bled. Elias saw one fall, a towering form crashing into the dirt, its armor cracked by nothing more than stubborn ingenuity and relentless human will. His chest tightened, not with triumph, but with the realization that they could fall. They were not gods. They were opponents. The battle raged into the night. Fire spread across the forested slopes, smoke rising to veil the stars. Every step, every clash carried the weight of survival, but also something greater: defiance. Humanity had been underestimated, and in the still moments between skirmishes, Elias remembered his sister's words once more. Why do you endure so much pain? The answer grew clearer with every alien strike repelled: because this was not about him. It was about the children who still slept in hidden bunkers, about the families clinging to hope, about the song of Earth itself. By dawn, the Vanguard was battered, exhausted, their numbers reduced. But when the sun rose over the smoke-streaked mountains, they still stood. And the alien force, once flawless in its advance, had pulled back, not far, but enough. Enough to admit silently that these small humans were not to be swept aside. General Kavanaugh's voice crackled through the comms, hoarse yet resolute. You've shown them who we are. They expected fear. They found fire. Elias looked at his comrades, their faces streaked with dirt and blood, and knew the words were true. The war was far from over. The enemy still held the sky, still wielded power beyond comprehension, but in the hidden places of their hearts, the Vanguard carried something the aliens could not measure or predict. It was not strength. It was not weapons. It was the unyielding refusal to surrender, no matter the odds. And as the fires on the mountain smoldered, Elias whispered a promise to himself, to his sister, and to the world he loved: we will not break. The mountains were quiet after the battle, too quiet. Ash drifted through the air like gray snow, settling on the blackened trees and the battered armor of the Vanguard. For the first time in many hours, no beams of alien fire streaked across the sky. The silence should have been relief, but instead it pressed against Elias's chest like an unseen hand. He sat with his back against a broken boulder, rifle laid across his knees. His muscles trembled from exhaustion, every part of him aching from the brutal clash. Around him, his squad tended to wounds, checked their equipment, or simply stared at the ground in hollow silence. Mira crouched nearby, wrapping a bandage around her arm where alien fire had grazed her. She caught Elias's gaze and forced a smile. We're still breathing. That counts for something. Elias gave a slow nod, but his mind was elsewhere. He kept seeing the faces of those who hadn't made it, their brothers and sisters in arms who had trained beside them for years, now gone in a single night. He had shouted their names, tried to reach them, but the battlefield had swallowed their voices whole. And it wasn't only their unit. Reports filtered through the comms: cities scorched, armies broken, whole regions cut off. The aliens had not come to conquer quickly. They were methodical, stripping away resistance piece by piece as though dissecting a living world. General Kavanaugh's orders came clear and steady through the static. Regroup. We cannot match them in open war. We strike where they least expect, where they are weakest. Every small victory is a spark, and sparks spread. It was strategy born from humanity's long history of survival. Elias knew it, Mira knew it, and yet the silence between battles made doubts louder. Could sparks really hold back a storm? That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He stood watch at the cliff's edge, the stars hidden behind smoke. His thoughts wandered back to his sister, Arya, and the last time he had seen her. She had been holding a book in her lap, smiling with that quiet warmth that had always steadied him. "Promise me," she had said. "Promise me you'll come back," he had promised. But promises were fragile things on nights like this. Mira joined him, her footsteps light despite the weight she carried. She didn't speak at first, just stood beside him, watching the faint glow of alien ships in the distance. Finally she said, "You're thinking of home, aren't you?" Elias asked. "Every second," she paused. "That's why we fight. Not for glory, not for orders, for the ones waiting in silence, praying we'll come back." Her words steadied him more than she could know. He realized then that silence was not only grief or doubt, it was also the space where courage gathered, where promises became resolve. The next mission came at dawn. Intel revealed an alien outpost hidden in the valley below, a hub for their communications. If the Vanguard could cripple it, they could blind the enemy, at least for a while. Moving through the shadows of the forest, Elias and his squad descended into the valley. Every sound felt amplified, the crunch of a boot on soil, the snap of a twig. The air hummed faintly with alien energy, unnatural and cold. The outpost was a sprawling structure of black crystal-like material, pulsing faintly with blue light. Towers rose like jagged teeth, sending signals into the sky. Alien guards patrolled with mechanical precision, their movements too smooth, too flawless to be mistaken for anything human. The Vanguard watched from the tree line. Elias's pulse quickened. This was not a fight they could win with brute force. It would take cunning, timing, and nerves of steel. He glanced at Mira, who gave a small nod. Then at his squad, their faces grim but unwavering. "For Earth," Elias whispered. They moved like shadows, slipping between patrols, planting charges at the base of the crystal towers. Every step felt like walking on the edge of a blade. Twice Elias nearly stumbled into view, saved only by Mira's steady hand. When the final charge was set, they retreated into the forest. The explosions came seconds later, thunder rolling across the valley as the towers collapsed in bursts of light. Alien voices rose in alarm, a chorus of rage and confusion. For the first time, the enemy staggered in the dark, blinded by the fire of human defiance, and in that moment, amid the chaos, Elias felt something awaken deep within him. It was not hope alone. It was certainty. The silence that had weighed so heavily was broken, not by despair but by the sound of humanity's will roaring back into the night. The destruction of the alien outpost was felt far beyond the valley. For a brief shining moment, humanity had struck back hard enough to make the invaders stumble. Across battered cities and broken camps, whispers spread like fire. The Vanguard fought them. The Vanguard won, but the enemy was listening. Elias and his squad had barely returned to their hidden camp when the counterstrike came. The ground shook as alien ships descended, their engines keening like a storm. Drones poured out, smaller than soldiers but faster, relentless, and mercilessly efficient. They scoured the forests, their sensor beams slicing through trees, their weapons cutting down everything that moved. The Vanguard scrambled to defend their position, but the drones were unlike anything they had faced. Mira fired short bursts, dropping one after another, yet more came, weaving between the trees with frightening intelligence. Elias shouted for his squad to fall back, every word nearly drowned by the shriek of alien engines. They ran, not as retreat but as survival, because survival was still resistance. The chase lasted hours. The forest turned to a graveyard of burning trunks and shattered earth. Finally, in the ruins of an old stone monastery, they found cover. The walls, though crumbling, gave them shadows deep enough to breathe. Elias pressed his back against the cold stone, his chest heaving. Around him, his comrades moved in silence, tending wounds, reloading weapons, counting losses. They were fewer now. The silence was heavier. Mira broke it with a whisper. "They're learning." The words chilled Elias more than the night air. She was right. The aliens had adapted to their tactics, deploying machines that hunted as humans hunted. The enemy had not come to Earth to simply overwhelm. They had come to understand. And that meant the Vanguard's greatest strength, the unpredictability of human will, was being studied. General Kavanaugh's orders came through fractured comms, his voice rough with urgency. They want to force us into the open. Don't give them that. Stay fluid, stay moving. Every step you take in defiance forces them to waste resources. Make them bleed time. Time is our weapon. Elias knew the general was right. Humanity could not outgun or outnumber their enemy. But time, the slow wearing down of certainty, the constant sting of resistance, that was something Earth could wield like a blade. That night, huddled in the ruined monastery, Elias dreamed of his sister again. In the dream, Arya stood in a field of wildflowers untouched by fire, holding the same book she had always carried. "They'll try to know you," she said softly, "but they can't know the whole of us. Don't let them." He woke with tears he would never admit to, gripping his rifle as though it were the only anchor in a world unraveling. At dawn, they moved again, not to fight openly, but to strike from the shadows. Guerrilla warfare became their creed. Ambushes in canyons, traps in abandoned cities, strikes on supply lines. They left chaos in their wake, forcing the aliens to spread thin, to waste strength on endless small fires. But with every victory came cost. The Vanguard grew thinner, their faces more drawn, their eyes carrying a weight no training could prepare them for. Elias watched Mira grow quieter, her usual calm now tinged with something darker, fatigue perhaps, or grief she refused to voice. Once, after a narrow escape, she turned to him and asked quietly, "How many more sparks can we make before we burn out?" Elias had no answer. He only knew they had to keep burning, no matter the cost. One evening, as the sun bled across the horizon, their scouts returned with grim news. The alien mothership itself was moving closer, its vast shadow crawling across the sky like the hand of a giant. It was not merely observing now, it was hunting. The Vanguard gathered in silence, staring upward. For the first time, Elias felt the true weight of their enemy's gaze, as though the ship itself was watching him, studying him, learning every breath he took, but instead of despair, something else stirred in him. Defiance sharpened into steel. If the enemy wanted to learn humanity, then humanity would teach them. And the first lesson was simple. Earth did not kneel. The mothership's shadow grew each day, a vast reminder that Earth lived beneath a watchful eye. It did not simply loom, it studied, adjusted, and punished. Every strike the Vanguard made was answered with sharper counterstrikes. Every path through the forests became a trap. Every ruined town was a snare waiting to close. Elias felt the net tightening. But he also saw something else, something the aliens had not accounted for. Humanity's resilience was not bound to its armies alone. It was in the people. As the Vanguard moved through scorched lands, they found survivors who refused to break. Families hidden in caves, farmers still tending burned soil, children whispering songs in the rubble of their schools. The aliens had shattered their homes, but not their will. And in those eyes, Elias saw the same fire he carried in his own chest. One evening, as they rested in the ruins of a library, a boy no older than 12 approached Elias. His clothes were torn, but his gaze was fierce. "They think we're afraid," the boy said. "But we're not. We're waiting." Elias knelt, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Then keep waiting. We'll give you the moment to rise." It struck him then. The Vanguard's true mission was not only to fight. It was to keep the fire alive long enough for the world to remember its strength. Mira echoed the thought later as they pored over maps, planning another strike. "We're not just soldiers anymore. We're a signal. Every time we stand, the world sees it can stand too." Elias nodded, though the weight of that truth pressed heavily. To be a signal meant never yielding, even when exhaustion gnawed at their bones. The next mission was bolder than any before. Intelligence suggested that the mothership's network relied on ground-based relays, tall crystalline spires that pulsed with alien energy, hidden across Earth like the roots of some vast tree. Destroying one could fracture the enemy's grip, if only briefly. The chosen target stood in the ruins of an old coastal city, half swallowed by the sea. To reach it, the Vanguard moved under cover of night, their path lit by the broken glow of street lamps long dead. Waves crashed against rusted steel and shattered concrete, a song of Earth's endurance echoing in the dark. The spire loomed above them, taller than any skyscraper, its surface alive with shifting light. Alien soldiers guarded its base, their armor gleaming under the moon. The Vanguard struck swift and sudden. Explosives set the ground trembling, while Mira's team drew the guards into a trap among the broken streets. Elias led the charge up the spire itself, scaling its jagged sides with a determination that burned through pain. Every step was agony. His fingers bled against the sharp crystal edges. His muscles screamed from weeks of battle without rest. Yet higher he climbed because he carried not just his own weight, but the weight of every promise he had made, to his sister, to Mira, to humanity. At the summit, he planted the charges. The blast tore through the spire, shattering it in a storm of blue fire. The shockwave rolled across the coast, throwing alien ships into disarray. For one brief, glorious hour, the sky above the sea was silent of their presence. The Vanguard returned battered but alive, and waiting for them at the edge of the ruins were survivors, hundreds of them cheering, weeping, clinging to one another with renewed strength. Elias stood among them, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. He realized then that the Vanguard's war was not measured in battles won or lost. It was measured in the sparks they lit in others. General Kavanaugh's voice came across the comms, firm yet carrying an edge of awe. "You've shown them what Earth is. Not just soldiers, people. And people don't vanish. They multiply." For the first time, Elias allowed himself to believe that the impossible was not unreachable. The aliens were powerful, yes. But humanity had something they could never replicate, the ability to kindle hope in the ashes, and hope, once lit, could become a fire the sky itself could not contain. The destruction of the coastal spire shook the invaders. For the first time, their network faltered, their forces scattered, and their perfect machine of conquest cracked. Humanity saw it, survivors whispered it, and across the world, pockets of resistance flared like embers catching wind. But the aliens responded with fury. The mothership descended lower than ever before, blotting out the sun. Entire regions trembled beneath its shadow. Beams of light rained down, carving scars into the earth. Cities were erased, seas boiled, forests burned. It was not strategy. It was punishment. The Vanguard marched through hell. Elias felt the heat of the burning world against his skin as he led his squad through smoking ruins. The air was thick with ash and grief. For days they fought without rest, pushing back wave after wave of alien soldiers and drones. Each battle claimed more of them. Each victory tasted of ash. Mira never left his side. She fought with the same calm precision she always had, but Elias could see the cracks forming in her eyes. The calm was no longer peace, it was armor, fragile and breaking. One night, after a brutal skirmish in a ruined factory, she sat beside him in the dark, her hands trembling though she tried to hide it. "Do you ever wonder," she whispered, "if this is what the end feels like? Not sudden, not loud, just everything breaking a little more each day." Elias didn't answer right away. He looked at the stars through the shattered roof, though even they seemed dimmer beneath the mothership's presence. Finally, he said, "If this is the end, then we'll make sure it's one they never forget." She turned to him then, her expression softening, her eyes shining with something deeper than words. For a moment the war faded, and they were simply two souls holding each other against the storm. The next day, the storm took Mira. It happened during a mission to ambush a convoy carrying alien supplies. The plan was sound, the execution perfect, until reinforcements arrived. The enemy swarmed in numbers the Vanguard could not match. In the chaos, Mira stayed behind to hold the line. Elias shouted for her, fought his way through fire and steel, but she stood her ground, her rifle blazing until the end. The last he saw was her silhouette against the flames, unyielding, unafraid. When the battle ended, she was gone. Silence fell heavy over the squad. No one spoke her name, not because they had forgotten, but because it hurt too much to breathe it aloud. Elias carried it within him, though, carried it like a blade. Her absence was a wound that would never close, yet it also became a vow carved into his soul. He thought of his sister, of the boy in the library ruins, of Mira's calm voice telling him they were more than soldiers. He thought of every spark lit in the darkness, and he realized that the only way to honor her was to keep striking, even as the world burned. The Vanguard regrouped in a hidden cavern system, far beneath the earth. General Kavanaugh stood before them, his face gaunt but his eyes fierce. "We've lost more than I can name," he said. "But listen to me, we are not finished. The enemy believes they can break us with fire. They're wrong. Fire is where humanity was born, and fire is where humanity rises. His words rippled through the cavern like a spark through dry grass. The Vanguard straightened, shoulders squaring, eyes hardening. They were broken, yes, but not defeated. That night, Elias stood alone at the cavern's edge, looking toward the unseen sky above. He whispered into the silence, "For you, Mira, for all of us." The world was burning. The Vanguard was bleeding. But the fire within humanity had not gone out. And soon that fire would turn into something the aliens had never faced before. The cavern air was heavy with resolve. Every soldier of the Vanguard carried scars now, on their bodies, in their hearts, etched into their very souls. They had lost comrades, families, entire cities. They had lost Mira. Yet something remained that no fire, no weapon, no shadow could burn away. Humanity's will. General Kavanaugh laid the plan bare. The mothership was descending lower each day, anchoring itself to Earth through its vast crystalline relays. If those anchors were severed, the ship would falter. It would not fall completely, but it would weaken, enough to drive the invaders back. The mission was impossible. The Vanguard had faced impossible before. Elias listened, silent, feeling Mira's absence like a hollow beside him. But her voice lingered in memory. "We're not just soldiers anymore. We're a signal." And so they moved one final time into the fire. The journey to the mothership's anchor was a march through apocalypse. Skies bled red as alien beams carved the horizon. Oceans churned where heat boiled them. Cities smoldered, their ruins whispering of lives stolen. Yet wherever the Vanguard passed, survivors rose to watch. They did not hide anymore. They followed in silence, in hope, in defiance. The closer they came, the fiercer the enemy grew. Alien soldiers poured forth in legions, their precision sharpened, their machines relentless. But the Vanguard fought with something no calculation could predict. They fought with grief, with love, with the burning memory of everything taken. Every clash was brutal. Every step forward was bought with blood. Yet they advanced, driven not by orders but by a promise that the world would not kneel. At last, they reached the anchor, a towering spire of black crystal rooted into Earth's crust, glowing with alien energy that pulsed like a heartbeat. Above it, the mothership loomed so close that its surface scraped the clouds, its shadow swallowing the world. The final battle erupted. Elias charged with his squad, weapons blazing, voices raised in a roar that drowned out fear. Explosions shook the ground. Alien soldiers closed in, their numbers endless. One by one, Vanguard fighters fell, but each fall only pushed the others harder. At the spire's base, Elias fought like a man possessed, every strike carrying Mira's strength, every breath carrying Arya's hope. He planted the charges with shaking hands, his body bleeding, his vision swimming. An alien commander rose before him, towering, armored in shimmering stone. Its weapon crackled with light, its presence crushing. It struck, and Elias barely deflected, pain lancing through his arm. The fight was hopeless. Yet he stood, because standing was all humanity had ever known. He remembered Mira's words in the monastery, remembered the boy in the ruins, remembered his sister's voice asking him to come back. And with a cry that shook the ashes from the air, Elias drove forward, not with strength but with will. The alien faltered. For the first time, Elias saw fear in its eyes, not of death but of understanding, of realizing that humanity was not a puzzle to be solved, but a fire that could not be contained. He pressed the detonator. The spire erupted in a storm of blue fire, the shockwave splitting the ground, tearing through alien ranks. Above, the mothership shuddered, its vast frame trembling as the anchor failed. A roar of energy echoed across the sky, and for the first time, the Leviathan withdrew. The world watched as the impossible happened. The ship, once untouchable, pulled back into the heavens, its shadow fading, its silence broken. The invaders had not been destroyed, but they had been stopped. Elias collapsed among the ruins, the flames reflecting in his eyes. Around him, the surviving Vanguard gathered, battered but unbroken. General Kavanaugh stood tall, his voice carrying across the battlefield. They will remember this day. They thought Earth would kneel. Instead, Earth taught them to fear. Elias closed his eyes, whispering into the smoke. "For you, Mira. For you, Arya. For all of us." The sky was scarred, the earth broken, but humanity still stood. And in that standing, a message had been carved into the fabric of the universe itself. You may bring fire, you may bring shadows, but you will never break the will of Earth. Because when the elite of humanity rise, trained not just in body but in spirit, even the stars must learn to bow.